Hello and welcome to G's Bees. Today I'll be demonstrating how to install a 3-pound package into a hive. So I ordered this package from Man Lake. It is a 3-pound package of Saskatraz bees. It arrived in about a day and a half, and there was less than probably 20 dead bees on the bottom, so I was very pleased with this package when it arrived. And the first thing you're going to do is get your whole hive set up, ready to get these bees installed. So I removed 3 frames from the middle there, and I have them hanging on the side of the deep box. And what I'm doing here is I'm spraying the bees with a little bit of 1-to-1 sugar water, which is 1 part sugar, 1 part water by weight. And I took that can out of the package there. That contains some sugar water that they came with so that they didn't starve in transit. Shook some of those bees off it that were on the bottom, and then you just pry open the side there and give them a few good shakes into the container. Now, if I were to do this again, while shaking these bees in, I would not hit the container on the frames themselves. I'd kind of keep the container suspended above that and give them a few good jolts. That way the bees don't get too upset. So here the bees are starting to settle down into the deep box, and while they're doing this, I come to the front here and start working on getting the queen out of that package. She's in her own little cage in there, and the reason she comes in her own separate cage is to ensure that the bees that she's coming with don't kill her, because they're not family. These companies just put a bunch of bees in a box and ship them out, so they don't recognize her as their queen right away. It takes some time for them to get used to her pheromone, her smell, and so they keep the queen in her own little cage during transit, and it has a little cork on the end of it. So this cork, I'm going to take the cork out and replace it with a marshmallow so that it takes the bees some time to eat that marshmallow away and release the queen. It should leave them enough time to get used to her smell and therefore accept her as their queen. Now, based on the way the bees were reacting to the queen cage in the package upon arrival, indicated that they probably had already accepted her. It seemed like they were trying to feed her through the screen on her cage. It would be a little different if they were trying to stick their abdomens through her cage, trying to sting her to death. So I wasn't too concerned. I could have probably done the direct release method at this point, where I just pulled the cork out and directly released the queen into the deep box. This would allow her to start laying eggs quicker, but just for extra insurance, I kept her in her own cage with that candy plug. So I've got my marshmallows there. I have one with me, and I also have a small flathead screwdriver that I'll be using. This is what I'm gonna pop that cork out with, and this is my first time ever handling a queen cage, and it's a little bit intimidating having all those bees around your fingers, but they're not there to harm you at all. They're just there to feed their queen. So I kind of slowly worked my fingers around those bees, and they crawl over you a little bit, but nothing to worry about, just something to get used to. And I was really hesitant, didn't want to jab that screwdriver through the cork and accidentally injure the queen. That would be quite the issue, because then you'd have to get on the phone or internet with the company and overnight a new queen so that your hive would survive. They can't be queenless for too long, and we do not want that. So I'm just sticking that flathead in the queen cage and trying to pry out that cork. It took a little longer than I anticipated for this first go around. The second install that I did today was a little bit quicker. So once I got that candy plug in place, it was time to put that queen cage in between a couple of frames. The queen cage comes with a little metal tab, so I used a 3.5-inch screw to wedge between the queen cage itself and that metal tab, and that way it would be suspended between a couple of frames. It's important to make sure the screen on the queen cage is accessible to the bees to continue to feed her over the next day or two until they eat away that marshmallow plug and release her into the hive. Now, once you have that queen cage suspended between a couple of frames, it's time to replace the frames that you have removed for the install. If you notice, 2 of these frames are wooden. That's because I got them from somebody that had hives last year, so they already had beeswax or comb built on them. So it gives the queen some cells that she could immediately start laying in once she's released. That way we're not wasting time during the warmer season when they're really active and producing new baby bees. Bees are also more likely to accept a hive that smells somewhat used or has used equipment in it, as opposed to a brand new hive that just smells like fresh cut lumber. So once these frames are replaced, I'm just pushing them together so that they're flush with each other, and you'll have a little extra space on the far sides of your deep box. So on the edges, that frame 1 and frame 10 will have a little extra room on the outside, but that's just fine. Now what I'm doing, I'm grabbing my feeder shim that I made. So what this has is a little feeder inside filled with 1-to-1 sugar syrup, which is 1 part water to 1 part pure cane sugar. And that's what the bees eat when there's not much nectar out in the environment. It's their carbohydrate. It's what gives them energy. So it's always good to feed packaged bees because they are thirsty after traveling, and you want to give them a good head start for the season. Notice how I have 2 contact points as I slide the top box onto the bottom box, so 1 contact point on each side, and you just slowly move it forward. Unfortunately, I crushed 2 bees here, felt real bad about it, and with experience and with time, hopefully we can get a little better at this and crush fewer bees. Now that the feeder shim is on, I just finish off by adding the outer cover. This protects the inside of the hive and helps keep the bees out of the weather. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you got something out of it. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments. And I'm excited to go through this first year of beekeeping with you and learn about the things that work and the things that don't work. I think it's always important to keep in mind that the number 1 rule of beekeeping is there are no rules in beekeeping. You'll get people telling you all these different ways to do things. There's no one right way. You just need to experience with trial and error what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And that's going to be the overall goal of this channel, is to try new things and see what works. So we'll see you next time. And thanks again for watching.